Bloodroot is one of my favorite plants, not because I use it all the time or even especially because of its properties in the body. It is a pretty plant, but I love the story that is attached to a structure on its seed. And it's a story that I use a lot when I'm teaching young children. So here goes. Bloodroot has a seed that drops from the plant intact and has a fleshy little, actually it looks kind of gelatinous and juicy. It has this little strip of gelatin attached to the side of the seed, and it is made up of lipids and starch and sugars, and it attracts ants, which is a good thing for the plant. It is a strategy. It's a good mutual relationship that's going on between the ant and the plant, because the plant needs the ant and the ant is getting a treat. That little strip of gelatin is actually an ant snack, and it attracts the ants that are going along the forested, moist area where the bloodroot lives, and they want this snack, and so they take the seed down into their nest, and at that point they're going to eat the Eliasome, and that doesn't hurt the seed at all. It's a completely separate structure. Once they have eaten the Eliasome, the seed is useless to them, but the seed is viable and ready to be planted, which the ant actually now does. They take it and put it on their compost pile, per se. This is where in their ant hill they have a space where they would put waste materials, and it is the most fertile area, and they drop the seed off there because now it's waste. It's not necessary to them. But what it has done for the plant is, one, it takes the seed and removes it from the possibility of being eaten by slugs or mice, which will consume the whole seed, and it's gone, and it can't be planted or used at all. So it protects the seed from getting eaten. And two, it takes it below the ground and actually plants it so that a new plant can grow. Really, really cool. I love this. I love this example of such a perfect partnership of one entity getting something and neatly doing exactly what the other entity needs it to do. And when I wanted to talk about it today, I found myself, I've actually deleted this video like 4 or 5 times now, because I found myself speaking about this relationship in the old way that I learned to talk about it in university. So as a plant scientist, I have always talked about the Eliasome as an adaptation. And there is absolutely evidence of plants adapting over the centuries. We see good adaptations. We see adaptations that we have affected as humans. So this is not to say that we don't have plants that adapt. I think God created all life to be able to adapt and be resilient, and plants have morphology that they add on that is done because of stressors in the environments, and this is all true. But in the case of the Eliasome, we have something else really interesting going on. The Eliasome structure that we see on seeds is actually this really interesting moment of tension between creationist scientists and mainstream science that now defines itself as seeking answers without any recognition of a creator God. And so I learned science underneath the latter. I learned science where we are coming from a place of evolution. All life happened as an accident. It arose out of nothing. It started as a single cell, and it has diversified from there. But as I have always been raised with a relationship with God, and as I have deepened my experience and understanding of God, I have looked deeper into creationism science and the issue of whether we believe the Bible to be true and we read it as true, or whether we read it as cute fables that are teaching us moral lessons and are disconnected. Now, obviously, you should have picked up by now that I am reading the Bible and I am looking for truths in it for our health. I am reading it literally. I am reading it as its place in history. I am reading it as a moment in actual time. So if we look at the Eliasome here from a standpoint of, I have to not find myself using language that is embedded in that evolutionary worldview. So is the Eliasome, as is suggested, is it an adaptation? Now, on that side of the wall, we have scientists believe that the Eliasome arose about 10 million years ago. And that's when they can find, as far as I can gather, they have found very limited evidence of plants that have this adaptation on their seeds in the fossil record. Very, very rare is it to be found at all. If you can imagine, this is a starch structure. It doesn't last very long. It gets moistened with water, it dissolves, it crystallizes, it changes. It's not something, it degrades with fungal help or bacterial help. So it's not something that stays around forever and ever. So it would be very difficult to find evidence of this over the long haul. It would be difficult to see it as a structure that just arose in a certain point in time. So the belief is that the Eliasome is a new adaptation around 10 million years. And currently, we can see about 111 species that have this seed structure. And there's the potential to believe that there may be upwards of 240, 250 species that just haven't been analyzed or seen yet. So, in fact, I'm sitting in front of one of them, that there's another one in my garden that has an Eliasome, and that's the violet, another really interesting plant. And maybe I'll talk about some of its stories on another day. The idea is that from an evolutionary standpoint, we've got all of these species that have adapted at the exact same moment in history. They've adapted this structure on the seed due to some sort of environmental pressure that they're all experiencing. And they all kind of accidentally have this, they have this adaptation that occurs, because when we talk about plant adaptation, it is through genetic variability. So we have crosses that are happening, and one in what's around me, I've got one violet that's white and one violet that's purple, and this is these are different variations of the original design of the violet. And maybe for some reason the purple is more successful, and so the purplish white kind of goes by the wayside over hundreds of years because there's some reason why this white doesn't survive in the environment. And that's how plant adaptation is happening in reality. It does happen, but this is the evidence that we are supposed to use for evolution. So Eliasomes are believed to be an example of convergent evolution. The idea that many different organisms that are unrelated, that do not have the same family tree, they don't come from similar families on in the way that we structure life. They don't have anything in common, but they have some sort of similar stressor that causes them to create a strategy for survival that is common across all of them. Now, this to me seems like it might be logical if all of those plants that are unrelated to one another are living in a similar environment. Maybe it's a little more plausible, but here you have 111 known species from, I think, about 60 to 70 different genre, and then I forget how many different families, but these are multiple very divergent plants across the planet. They aren't all in the same environment. Some of the plants that have Eliasomes live in a situation like my front flower bed. They're maybe dappled shade, they need low fertility soil, they're moist, they have predators that come to that area and they're dealing with that, and they have access to ants that are interested in feeding on this treat. But a lot of the other ones are in desert areas or very hot spaces on the planet, very dry spaces, very different soils, different rock powders in the soils, different nutrition. So they are not in the same environment. They're not acting with the same sort of stressors. They're all getting different stressors. And yet we're supposed to accept rather, that somehow across the world, in all of these different environments, these very different plant families, species, arise with the same accidental genetic variation that becomes successful, and they all move forward, and now we have all of these plants with Eliasomes. They're using a strategy that's similar. Now, convergent evolution in evolutionary thinking and mainstream science is supposed to be even more of an evidence that evolution is real. My problem with it is that it actually begins to fall apart more and more. It just mathematically doesn't make sense. When I was in university, I was also expected to believe that the way that we know the phytochemicals that are found within plants and how they're able to be used in the body, and which plants are used for the liver and which plants are used for headache and which plants help with your arthritis, was trial and error. If you think about the number of species of plant that are on this planet, just of what we know, and we are finding new species every day, it is mathematically impossible to think that somehow humans have been on the earth long enough to stumble out into the forest and just try a new plant every day. And, one plant killed Johnny, let's not eat that one anymore. Maybe we should try this one. Oh, look, my head feels better. That one is for headache. The mathematical possibilities of either of these arguments just doesn't wash. So I kept looking for something in the fossil record that I could hold on to in trying to reason through what the Eliasome is. Is it a recent adaptation? Is it somehow a good argument to hold on to this idea of convergent evolution? Or is it creative design? Is it intelligent creator design? Which is what my instinct is. And that's why it was so difficult when I sat here to start talking through this video. My instinct is that this is really clever design. It is absolutely evidence of a loving creator God that makes sure that every organism can work. There's co-creation, there's cooperation, that there's competition, and some of these seeds are going to get eaten by slugs and mice, and some of them are going to survive because an ant comes along and takes it down into the burrow. I feel like my gut says that that's the truth. But my science background and education wants to use words that actually speak. When I speak about adaptation, I'm speaking about evolution. I'm not talking about a creator God anymore, because evolution cannot be evolution. We were taught that evolution can actually act at the same. You can hold both of those things in your hands. You can hold a creator God and evolution, and you can't. It is not possible. We can definitely look scientifically at our world and recognize that plants are intelligent, that all of life was given the ability to adapt and change and be resilient without needing evolution. So anyway, I did find a recent discovery of it's a plant. Oh gosh, it's now extinct. Lycopsid. It's a lycopsid, and they found it in. There are issues whether you believe in old Earth or new Earth. It's something to really look into, where you stand in that. But I think that it's probably generally accepted that there are problems with carbon dating. But they found this lycopsid Eliasome still intact in the fossil record, and it was dated to 280 million years ago. And here is this starch structure, this sugar structure, still viable, still capable of harvesting cells from it so that it could be studied, supposedly 280 million years ago. And it defies all scientific understanding of how this structure could have been maintained. Just like we've seen some things, we've seen keratin still soft in skin and feathers recently. We've found DNA coming out of bones that was not possible. We're seeing things that bust this idea of a really, really old Earth happening all the time. And the Eliasome is actually another incidence of this sort of tension with what we believe and what we strongly hold as the beginning point of any science that we do. Because now we refuse to do science that acknowledges a creator God, because that creates a bias. That's the idea, is that creates a bias. Now we are starting with a bias that there is no creator God, and that evolution is an accepted truth, and we start from there. And so what we find is an attempt to somehow shoehorn everything that we find at the end of our theorems into where we started. It has to somehow align with the truth that we believe we are acting from. Science, when it's done with an awareness that there's a creator God, goes out and seeks and is curious and analyzes and is wrong sometimes, and learns new things. But at the end of the day, when we find the empty space where we no longer know how to go any further, we find God. We don't find our own gray matter. That is a different science. It's a different science that I want to practice and that I practice daily. I love science. I think science is a relationship with God. So this is the Eliasome. I think because of some of what we're seeing in the fossil record now, I think we have more evidence that the seeds that are being laid down in the fossil record are actually it happened much sooner, much sooner ago, not as long ago as millions and millions of years, because it's not possible for these cells to still be viable. And it does support more of an idea of a catastrophic event that happened somewhere in the last several thousand years, as opposed to 280 million years ago. So the Eliasome has been something that plant structure fascinates me. This is one that just is really, really cool. And it's so interesting to me now that as I dig deeper into the word, And as I'm trying so hard to look through the world that I have around me with my science background intact, armed with what I know to be true, and do both of those things at the same time, I'm finding this struggle that I didn't anticipate. Today was really, really difficult. Uh, and I'm telling a story that I've told hundreds of times before in front of elementary students and in front of garden clubs. And it's always been fascinating to me. But I realized today, I was convicted when I started speaking, that I was speaking with language that was coming from a belief system that I didn't hold. I could feel the dissonance, and it was so hard to produce this. But I hope that the story of this plant is encouraging to you, interesting. I just think plants are so cool. Plants were here, if we're reading the Bible as truth, plants were here at day 3. They were one of the first things that God created. They are the foundation for plants, for humans and animals. They breathe out the oxygen that we need for our environment. They are, I believe, gifted and endowed with a level of intelligence that we don't understand, or that we have ceased to seek and understand, because it's either this woo-woo place and magic and magical realism, or it is occult and unscientific. But I hope to reveal more of that. I think the more you study plants, the more you will see not just their intelligence, but an intelligent designer behind it all. So have a really awesome day. I hope that God blesses you today and always. And I hope that, I pray that you return to read and study along with me tomorrow.